Everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Laura and I'm so happy to have you join me today. And if you're new here, please consider giving me the thumbs up as it really helps my channel, but also by subscribing, leaving me your comments, and make sure to turn on your notifications so you know when we have new content to share with you. All right, let's get started as I show you how to make these 4 super lovely wire rings. So the materials we are using today is just a variety of wire, and these are all about a 20 gauge. Here we have our ring mandrel and then just a variety of pliers. Now the first ring we are going to make is this very simple little rose ring. So once again, we have our 20 gauge wire here, and we're going to straighten this out, and we are looking at probably about a half a meter of this here. So then we just fold it lightly in half, and then we find what size we want our ring to be on the ring mandrel. I'm going to go with a size 7 just because. And I'm only going to wrap the wire once, right? So just one loop on here. And then we're taking our wire and just kind of give it a twist so you see it sort of has these loops here. And we're going to just twist this here. And that just fastens it, just kind of locks it in place. And then we take those 2 wires and we wind them together. Nice wraps here. Well, it doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be exact. And this wire is looking like it'll likely be too long. If we use it all, we'll end up with this huge rosebud. Okay, so we've got that part of it. We're going to pop it back on the mandrel. It just helps with control. And then we just start to spin the wire around itself until you reach whatever desired size you'd like the rosebud to be. And that's looking pretty good to me right there. So we're popping it off again. And once again, we did end up with an excess of wire, as I thought we might. So then we are just going to make sure the wire is parallel to what would be our band, and then we're just snipping that off, and this is probably about 1 centimeter in length, and then flipping it upside down. We're taking a pair of our jewelry pliers. Once again, these are non-scarring, and then we just take and we curl that underneath, and if you can poke it up into the center of your rose, that's perfect, because then you don't have any pointy ends to be poking you as you're wearing this little cutie. So there you go. There is our first ring. Super cute. So for our second ring, which is this one here, so it is also the rose style, but we add the little curlicues, the little rosebuds on either side of the larger rose. Alright, so for this I chose to use an antique bronze. This is a 20 gauge as well, and because we're making 3 wraps for the shank, or for the band of our ring, we are looking at more like closer to about 3/4 of a meter of this wire. So we're straightening it out. And then matching those ends together, making a nice curve here. We pop it on our ring mandrel. So we are going to wrap this so that we end up with 3 strands of wire, which is going to make our band. Right, so 1, 2, 3, that's just what we did here. You can see the 3 of them. All right, so now it's the same thing. We're trying to make sure our wires are approximately the same length. So then we find our center point-ish. And then we cross them over. Long wires, everything's getting dragged around, pushed around here. And then once again, we just start to wind our wire. This one we're going to do the entire length because, of course, we are doing our little rosettes on the ends of these. Okay, so we have twisted our entire length of wire, and it does end up being quite long. And then we pop it back onto our mandrel. And we do exactly like we did with the first ring. Just take that wire and we just start to wrap it around. Sometimes it's easier if you just turn your mandrel. Okay, and that's about the size that I want. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to snip this off, and then we are going to just tuck this end in underneath like we had the first one. Now what we need to do here is we need to make sure that there's enough room underneath our rosette, so we've created a little bit of a gap. We're going to take the rest of our wire that we twisted and folding it lightly in half. We're going to pop this underneath that, and we're just going to give it, just going to fold it once around itself like so. So now we have a piece of our twisted wire sticking out in either direction. Now we want to give ourselves a little bit of room here for the rosette to fit in there. So what I'm going to do is take the one wire here, and I'm just going to give it one wrap around our band, and that's going to fasten it in place, but it's also going to create a little bit of space between our large rosette and then our smaller ones. So we do the same thing on the other side. Okay, and then we start to twist from the center. What would be the center of the rosette here, right? See what I did there? I just took the wire and I just formed it into just a little loop to create the center of our rosette, right? So we're looking at this area here, right? Just right in there. So then continuing with this, we just form the rosette like that. just by making a couple of wraps. So same thing on the other side. We're pulling our wire straight out, and then we're just creating a little bit of a loop. And you're more than welcome to use your pliers for this if you find that it's a little bit easier. Created just that little loop there, holding it in place. You just want to wrap that around. Trying to keep the rosettes at approximately the same size. This one looks just slightly bigger, so I'm going to just bring this one around one more time, like so. All right, so we're just snipping off our wire. We're giving about 1 centimeter. Once again, you can just eyeball that. And then we're just going to bring this wire around, and then we want to tuck it in underneath as much as possible, just by giving it a little twist like that. Okay, and you don't feel that tail at all, which is ideal. Same thing with this one. We're just going to snip it off at about the centimeter point or so. We bring it around our rosette and we tuck it into place. And flattening that out with our flat nose curved jewelry pliers. Okay, so we can give everything a little bit of a squeeze. The copper. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the silver for this. And once again, this is a 20 gauge silver wire. So once again, all we do is we straighten it up, straighten it out, hold it lightly in half, and then we take our ring mandrel. Well, look at that, the sun has come out. We pop it on there, and we're going to make 3 loops. So if you can see that, I've got 3 of them that actually make up the band for this one. And we just simply wrap the wires around like so. We want to try and keep our end wires approximately the same length for this. And then once we have it wrapped, have our 3 rings on it, we quite simply just take one end of the wire, we bend it up, and then the other end we bend it down. And this gets a little finicky, gets a little piddly, and sometimes your rings separate, so by all means pop it back on your mandrel anytime you need to. Okay, so we're holding on to that right where the rings have crossed over, and we take our end of one of our wires and we pull it through the rings and out the other side, and then we take the second wire and we do the same thing. Now ideally we're keeping these wires approximately the same length. So from the center point here we've got, I'm going to say that looks pretty good. So we can tell by bending our wires out. This is our center point. Wire there. That's got to be pretty darn close. And these don't have to be exact. So then we take our first wire and we bring it around, keeping these loops that make our band nice and flat. And we bring that wire and we cross it back over the center area. We can just kind of move it out of the way a little bit. Once again, we want to make sure that our band is kept loose, or pardon me, kept tight. I don't know where that came from. Loosening up those wires, I guess, is where I was going with that. And then very carefully bending this one, maintaining that flatness in the band, and then you just bring this one back around. So then flipping it over, we're going to take, and I just flip it over because I like that overlapping aspect of the wire on this design. Take that, we bring it back through our band, keeping it nice and flush with the other wire. This just makes it look nice. And then we just bring that up. And then we want to snip this wire nice and close to the one that it's crossing over. And we're not actually going to cross it any further. We're just going to tuck that, cut that off. And then we're just going to take that end and we're just going to tuck it nicely, neatly up against those wires. So when we take this remaining wire, that end is tucked nicely away. We're not seeing the end of it at all. So take our remaining wire, pop it through our band again, and we tuck it up against the teardrop that's there. Oops, that slipped on me. We want to bring it around, and it just keeps slipping on me. Okay, so we brought it around like so. Just adjusting things a little bit, making sure our band is nice and flat and together. So then we bring that wire around, just as in the other side here, and that did slip a little bit. So we can adjust it, just that touch. And then we're going to cut this one off, right flush up against that wire, like we did the previous side. So bringing it around, making sure it's nice and flat. Just give it a nice snip. Taking that end and tucking it under as best we can. Adjusting it where necessary. All right, and there we go. There's that beautiful little infinity band here. So now for the last ring, we are doing the same style as what our smaller infinity band was, but we're just going to add this extra little detail to it. So I'm going to take my silver wire, and I'm going to take about 3/4 of a meter. Once again, we're folding it just lightly in half, like so, popping it back onto our ring mandrel. And for this one, as you can see, we have 4 wires that make up our band. So it's just a little bit more substantial. This one was 3. Well, there's the sunshine again. Hope this doesn't detract from you guys being able to see. So for this one, like I said, we want 4 strands, so we're going to wrap like this, and then we're going to need 1 more either direction. And then once again, we want to try and make sure that our, sorry, a little awkward to hang on to. We want to make sure that our end wires are approximately the same. This is a little bit off measurement wise, but that's fine. It'll be perfectly okay. So once again, we're taking and we're crossing our wires over in the center, just folded from one side to the other, holding on to our band. And that just slipped a bit. Pop it back onto the mandrel, and that's what I meant by that. Is it does happen. So just use your mandrel, use your tools as you need to on any of these projects. So taking this wire, we're popping it through. We're creating our little teardrop, just like in the first one. Holding this nice and firmly, keeping those wires flat. And I just keep yanking on it. Okay, we bring this wire around and do the same thing. Okay, bringing it around and crossing it the center, popping it through, and then bringing it back up around and crossing it over. And to cross it over at this point is pretty much just to hold it in place. All right, so we do the same thing with this one. We go through and bring it across and under, just like the other side. So I hope you can see a little bit of glare with the sun shining. It's supposed to be overcast all day. That's why I was doing this early in the day. Normally I wait until later in the afternoon. But there you have it. Is what it is, right? Okay, so now we're looking at taking and cutting about 1 centimeter on each of our remaining wires. So 3/4 of a meter was an overestimate. Of course, look at the amount that I have left over. But better too much than not enough. And I can tell you right now, these are going to be too long for our purposes. So I'm going to just backtrack a bit here and then cut it again. And then this one actually looks pretty good. Okay, we're going to go with those. So we're going to take the ends of our wires and we're just going to start to curl them in, just making these little loops. Alright, that's one on one side, and then bring it around. Create that loop on the other side. This one is kind of buckled up against itself, so we'll just bring it back up so that it lays a little flatter. So thank you so much for popping by and joining me as we made these really great little rings. I really appreciate you being here. And don't forget to give me the thumbs up. It really helps my channel. Subscribe, comment, and click that bell to get my channel notifications. So for now, this is Laura, and thanks again, and I hope you have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you soon.